It's week 5 of social media and web analytics, and I thought I'd take a few minutes to introduce you to what we're going to cover this week. In the video lecture, we're going to talk about the topic of influencers. So in week 4, we thought about the role of word of mouth on consumer demand, essentially, where word of mouth was essentially thought of as, a conversation between any people in society and the potential impact that has on consumers. When we're thinking of influencers, we're thinking of people that are somewhat influential, which essentially comes down to people who have a large amount of followers and decide to self-tag themselves as influencers or work for an influencer marketing agency. What we want to think about in this influencer space is what are influencers and what does the influencer market look like? How we identify people who might be susceptible to influence? So then that's the idea that, who might be influenced by influencers. Think about, are influencers effective in changing consumer behavior? And then thinking about the idea that until very recently, the influencer marketplace has been a bit of a Wild West without a lot of regulation. And regulators have started to worry about that and introduced a bunch of regulation around influencers and kind of sponsorship disclosure, saying that, hey, yes, I'm getting paid for saying this. And we want to think about how that kind of regulation might impact consumer engagement, which might ultimately impact the way consumers make decisions based on what influencers send to them, or messages they put out, sorry. In the computing lectures, we're going to think about text analytics. So we're going to pivot away from regression, different differences, natural experiments, and think about, well, on these social media sites or on the internet in general, there's a lot of text available. And these might give us as marketing analysts useful insights to kind of understand consumer behavior. Think back to last week in week 4, the paper that I wrote with a couple of co-authors about word of mouth on demand. How does the sentiment of tweets impact demand? I had to deal with trying to process text to infer sentiment. So what we're going to think about this week is the first steps towards doing that, which is like, how do I use text as data? Do I need to tie it up into some certain way and kind of prepare it to kind of clean out words that may or may not be super useful in the analysis? And then we're going to do some descriptive analytics and plotting to kind of understand some text features. That's going to be used to kind of understand the base, so that in week 6 and 7, we can extend that idea and do analytics along the lines of sentiment analysis or topic modeling. So sentiment analysis, positivity or negativity of text. Topic modeling, what topics are talked about in a bunch of texts. So this is going to lay the foundations for that. The example we're going to use is going to be a bunch of eBay reviews. And then in the actual lecture, we'll decide kind of iteratively what products from eBay we might want to try and infer or learn something about and clean up. That's it for the lectures. Then there's the work you guys need to do. So the lab assignment this week is going to pair nicely with that computer lecture. It's going to be an introduction to text analytics. So we're going to use a lot of the stuff we did in the computer lecture and apply it to a different example. The example we're going to work with is fake review detection. So there's going to be, big picture, a bunch of hotel reviews. Some of them are authentic hotel reviews written by real people who stayed at a hotel. Some of them are just people who haven't stayed at hotels that have been asked, write a review of this hotel, which is a fake review because they haven't stayed there. What we want to figure out, at least at a descriptive level in this lab assignment, is, are there certain words that people might use in fake reviews where people haven't stayed in the hotel and haven't had the experience that might differ from kind of real and authentic reviews? So what we want to do is clean up the text and then start looking at word frequencies in truthful reviews versus fake reviews and see if we can learn something. That's what you're going to work through in the lab assignment. In the lab section, where you're going to have your kind of small group meetings, Our marketing analytics in the wild task is going to look back to week 4, so the word of mouth topic again, and solve a problem where you're working for a large video game company who's trying to figure out how they can measure the effect of volume and sentiment on demand for video games. So this idea is quite similar to the idea we thought about in the lecture last week with demand for movies. They're new products, there's uncertain quality. We don't have access to an experiment. How might we be able to measure the effects of volume and sentiment on social media for the demand for those video games? In the second half of that lab section, we'll think about reviewing lab section 3. And, again, going back, what was lab section 3? We're thinking about differences. That's going to be super useful because it's going to tweak for you and remind you of all the things you need for the group assignment that's due this week. Thinking of the group assignment this week, that is something you should be working on and working towards finalizing. I think it's due at the end of the week. And you should also be beginning or continuing your exam revision, because that exam comes up quite fast in these shorter 7 to 8 week blocks.